You're listening to the Harmony of We, a space for remembering what we already are together. I'm Greg Kuiper, counselor, author, and fellow traveler in this ongoing field of being human. This podcast isn't about fixing. It's not about getting relationships right. It's about coming into resonance with yourself, with each other, and with the presence that lives in between. This is where the book Relationship, the Harmony of We continues in breath, in story, and in shared awareness. Hi, so glad you could be here with me today. You know, over the past several months, we've been exploring what happens between people, how people interact with each other, how they engage in relationship. We've watched a couple, Ethan and Maya, slowly learn to notice one another in new ways. They've discovered that relationships aren't transformed through grand gestures. They're shaped by ordinary moments. A pause instead of a reaction, or a question instead of an assumption. Having the courage to return after disconnection and the willingness to receive appreciation without pushing it away. As I've reflected on those conversations, one realization keeps returning. Every meaningful moment we've explored rested on something deeper, something we rarely notice because we usually only recognize it when it's missing. Safety. Not the kind of safety that locks the doors at night. The kind that quietly says, you can be yourself here. Several years ago, I was sitting with a couple who had been married for more than 30 years. By most outward measures, they were doing well. They rarely argued. They managed life pretty well, pretty efficiently. They had raised children and built careers, shared decades of memories. And yet, one afternoon, the wife quietly said something that changed the direction of our conversation. She looked at her husband and said, I don't think I've let you see who I really am for a very long time. Everything got really still in the room. He looked surprised, not defensive, but definitely confused. You could see it on his face. I didn't know that, he said softly. I know, she replied. I don't think I knew it either. That moment has stayed with me because it reminded me that people don't usually hide because they're dishonest. They hide because somewhere along the way they stopped feeling safe enough to be fully seen. So think about this. Safety is a feeling before it's a thought. One of the things neuroscience has helped us understand is that the nervous system is constantly asking a quiet question. Am I safe here? Long before we consciously evaluate a conversation, our body has already begun to respond. Stephen Porges' work on polyvagal theory reminds us that our nervous system is always scanning our environment. The radar is on, not just for danger, but for cues of welcome, a gentle voice, relaxed eyes, or an unhurried response. Someone who listens without immediately correcting us. These become signals that allow the body to soften. Safety isn't something we think ourselves into, it's something we experience. Think about someone with whom you immediately relax. What is it about them? Perhaps it's not anything they say. Maybe it's what your body no longer has to do in their presence. You don't have to defend or perform or manage. You don't have to prove anything. You simply arrive. And safety grows through consistency. Many people imagine trust as a single decision. I don't think it works that way. Trust grows the way a garden grows, quietly, repeatedly, one ordinary day at a time. Every time someone keeps a promise, or every time they respond with curiosity instead of criticism, the nervous system makes a small note. Maybe it's safe again. This doesn't happen because perfection appeared, it happens because consistency did. John Gottman's research echoes this beautifully. Thriving relationships aren't built on extraordinary moments. They're built on countless small moments of turning toward one another. Safety accumulates one interaction at a time. And safety allows truth. Brene Brown often says that vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. I'd add something to that. Vulnerability needs a place to land. Without safety, vulnerability feels like exposure. With safety, it becomes intimacy. Think about the conversations that have changed your life. Chances are they happened because someone believed it was safe enough to tell the truth. Not because they weren't afraid, but because something in the relationship held them while they were. Sometimes we wonder why another person won't open up. Perhaps the more helpful question is, what am I creating that makes openness feel possible? Safety doesn't always mean comfort. This is where many of us can become confused. A safe relationship is one where difficult conversations don't threaten belonging. You can disagree or feel disappointed. You might even make mistakes, even hurt one another unintentionally. And you still believe we're going to go find our way back. That's safety, the presence of trust. And this is where we find ourselves becoming safe for one another. Perhaps this is one of the quiet callings of relationship, to become places where love can live. To become someone whose presence says, you don't have to become someone else before you're welcome here. The great psychologist Carl Rogers believed that people flourish when they experience empathy, genuineness, and unconditional positive regard. I think he was describing safety, not permissiveness and not avoiding accountability, but creating a relationship where growth is possible because acceptance comes first. As I think back over Ethan and Maya's journey, I realized something. Nothing really changed until safety began growing between them. They didn't just become better communicators, they became less afraid of being honest. Safer to ask, safer to pause, safer to return, and safer to receive love. Everything we've explored has been quietly building this foundation. Safety is the soil. Everything else grows from it. Perhaps we spend too much time asking, how do I improve this relationship? Maybe a gentler question is, what does my presence invite? Does it invite honesty, curiosity, imperfection, repair? Or does it invite caution? The answer isn't something we judge. It's simply something to notice, because awareness is always the beginning of change, always. As you move through this week, pay attention to the people with whom your shoulders naturally relax. And ask yourself, what would it mean to become that kind of presence for someone else? Sometimes the greatest gift we offer another person isn't advice. It's becoming a place where they no longer feel they have to hide. The healing begins in the space between us. May you walk in the harmony of we.